The acrid smoke of burning metal and flesh hung thick in the corridors of Mining Station Echo 7, each breath a reminder of the massacre that had unfolded mere hours ago. Captain Elias Kane pressed his back against the scorched wall, medical kit clutched in his weathered hands, listening for the telltale clicks and hisses of Zilani communication. The silence was almost worse than the sounds of battle. It meant the hunters were being careful. Elias had been stationed on Echo 7 for 3 months, providing medical support to the mining crews who extracted the rare quantum crystals that powered humanity's fleet. It was supposed to be a quiet assignment, far from the front lines of the war that had raged between humans and the Zilani Confederacy for over a decade. That illusion had shattered at 600 hours when Zilani raiders descended on the station like vengeful shadows. Now, 12 hours later, Elias was likely the only human left alive on the station. He edged forward through the maintenance corridor, avoiding the main passages where Zilani death squad still prowled. His destination was the emergency beacon in communications. If he could reach it, maybe a rescue ship would find more than just corpses. The beam of his tactical light cut through, the darkness revealing the twisted remains of bulkheads and the occasional human body. Each face he recognized made his heart clench tighter. That's when he heard it, a low, pained moan from behind a collapsed section of ceiling. Not human. The sound was deeper, with an alien cadence that made his combat training scream at him to run. Instead, Elias found himself moving toward it. What he discovered in the debris made him freeze. A Zilani warrior lay pinned beneath a massive support beam, dark purple blood pooling around her armored form. Even wounded and unconscious, she was imposing. Nearly 7 feet tall with the characteristic elongated limbs and angular features of her species. Her armor bore the crimson markings of a high-ranking commander, and the weapon beside her was still warm from recent use. Elias recognized her immediately. Every human in the outer colonies knew that face from wanted posters and intelligence briefings. Vela Korath, the Crimson Blade, responsible for the destruction of 3 human settlements and the deaths of over 2,000 civilians. The woman who had orchestrated the Centauri massacre, where an entire refugee convoy had been wiped out. His hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. One shot would end it. Justice for all those she had killed. No one would question finding her, body in the ruins. But as his finger found the trigger, Vela's eyes fluttered open. Not the burning gold he expected from a killer, but a pale amber that seemed almost vulnerable. She tried to speak, but only managed a wheeze, purple blood, frothing at her lips. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment she wasn't a monster from the propaganda vids. She was just another wounded soul in need of help. "Damn it," Elias whispered, holstering his weapon and moving toward her. The Hippocratic oath he'd taken 15 years ago echoed in his mind. First, do no harm. It didn't say anything about species or allegiance. It just said to heal. Working quickly, Elias assessed her injuries. 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, possible concussion, and severe lacerations along her left arm where the beam had crushed her. Without immediate medical attention, she'd be dead within the hour. He glanced around the ruined corridor, calculating risks. The Zilani search teams would be through this section soon, and his presence here with their wounded commander would mean certain death. But he'd already made his choice. "This is going to hurt," he told her, knowing she probably couldn't understand. Standard. Zilani vocal cords could process human language, but few warriors bothered to learn it. Vela's eyes widened as he began to work, clearly recognizing him as human but unable to comprehend why he wasn't killing her. Elias administered a painkiller from his kit, one designed for human physiology but similar enough to Zilani biology to help. He'd studied their anatomy extensively during his medical training, preparing for the day when human and Zilani wounded might end up in the same field hospital. That day had never come. Until now. As he worked to stop her bleeding and stabilize her condition, Elias found himself talking to her in low, soothing tones, the same way he spoke to frightened patients. "Easy there. I know it hurts, but I need you to stay still. That's it. Just breathe." Vela's amber eyes tracked his every movement, confusion and pain warring in her expression. She tried to speak again, managing only a few words in her native tongue before exhaustion claimed her. 20 minutes later, she was stable enough to move. Elias rigged a makeshift stretcher from debris and began the painstaking process of getting them both to safety. He knew of a maintenance shaft that led to the old mining tunnels, abandoned sections where they could hide until he figured out what came next. As he dragged the unconscious Zilani commander through the wreckage of Echo 7, past the bodies of his colleagues and friends, Elias wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Or perhaps in this galaxy torn apart by hatred and war, he'd just done the only thing that mattered. He'd chosen to save a life, regardless of whose it was. The sound of Zilani voices echoed in the distance, growing closer. Elias quickened his pace, pulling his unlikely patient deeper into the shadows, away from the war above and toward an uncertain future below. The first thing Vela noticed was the absence of pain. The crushing agony that had consumed her chest was reduced to a dull ache, and the sharp fire in her left arm had dimmed to a manageable throb. The second thing she noticed was the scent, distinctly human, mixed with the sterile smell of medical supplies. Her eyes snapped open to find herself in a dimly lit chamber carved from raw stone, lying on what appeared to be an improvised medical bed. Ancient mining equipment lined the walls, and a single emergency light cast everything in harsh shadows. But it was the figure hunched over a data pad nearby that made her blood freeze. Human. Male. Dark hair streaked with premature gray, weathered face marked by years of seeing too much. He wore the blue and white uniform of a human medic, and when he looked up at her movement, his brown eyes held no malice, only cautious concern. "You're awake," he said quietly, in accented but fluent Zilani. "How do you feel?" Vela's mind reeled. A human speaking her language was shock enough, but the gentle tone, the genuine inquiry about her well-being, it shattered every assumption she'd held about the enemy species. She tried to sit up, instinct demanding she assess threats and escape routes, but dizziness forced her back down. "Easy," the human said, not moving closer, but keeping his voice low and calm. "You had severe internal bleeding. I've stabilized you, but you need rest." "You?" Vela's voice came out as a rasp. She cleared her throat and tried again. "You saved me." The words felt foreign on her tongue, inconceivable. "Yes." "Why?" The question exploded from her with more force than intended. "I am Vela Korath. I have killed your people, destroyed your colonies. Why would you?" "Because you were dying," he interrupted simply. "I'm Captain Elias Kane, and I'm a medic. It's what I do." Vela stared at him, searching for deception, for hidden motives. Her people had taught her that humans were savage, driven by base instincts and incapable of honor. Yet here was one who had risked his life to save his greatest enemy. "This makes no sense. Your kind—" "My kind what?" Elias asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "What exactly did they tell you about us?" For a moment, Vela found herself at a loss. The propaganda felt hollow in the face of this man's actions. That you are odd without honor, that you kill for pleasure, take what is not yours, show no mercy to the weak. Elias was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I suppose we tell similar stories about your people, that you're heartless killers who enjoy causing suffering." "We are warriors," Vela said automatically. "We fight for the glory of the Confederacy, and I'm a healer," Elias replied. "I fight to save lives. Seems we're both following our nature." The simple logic of his statement unsettled her more than any battle cry could have. Vela had been trained since childhood to see conflict in absolutes. Zilani versus human, strength versus weakness, honor versus savagery. This human's compassion didn't fit those categories. "The station," she said, changing the subject to something she could understand. "My forces, gone," Elias said quietly. "They pulled out 6 hours ago. Probably assume you died in the collapse." Vela processed this information. Her own people had abandoned her following standard protocol. No warrior was worth risking the mission, not even a commander. It was logical, expected. So why did the human's rescue feel more honorable than Her own people's pragmatism? And your people? She asked. Elias's jaw tightened. All dead as far as I know. I was trying to reach the communications array when I found you. To call for rescue? Yes. But instead you saved me. Vela couldn't keep the bewilderment from her voice. You chose to save the one who killed them. I chose to save someone who was dying. Elias corrected gently. What you've done before, what I've done before, that's the past. Right now, in this moment, you're just another patient who needs help. Vela had been a warrior for 32 of her 45 years. She understood strategy, tactics, the necessities of war. But this concept, this idea of putting compassion above conflict, was alien to her. I don't understand you. That's okay, Elias said, turning back to his data. Pad, I don't fully understand myself sometimes, but understanding isn't always necessary. Sometimes you just have to act. Over the next few hours, as Vela's strength slowly returned, she found herself studying this human who had upended everything she thought she knew. He checked on her regularly, offering water and basic nutrition supplements modified for Zilani physiology. His touch was always clinical, respectful, never lingering. When she asked how he knew so much about her species' medical needs, he explained his training in xenobiology. I always hoped, he said quietly, that someday we might treat each other's wounded instead of just creating more of them. As night fell in their underground refuge, Vela lay awake listening to the steady rhythm of Elias's breathing as he slept nearby. He'd positioned himself between her and the tunnel entrance, not as a guard but as a shield, ready to protect her from his own kind if necessary. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This human, whose people she had killed, whose friends lay dead above them, was prepared to die defending her, not because of duty or orders, but because he had chosen to see her as someone worth saving. For the first time in her adult life, Vela Korath, the crimson blade of the Zilani Confederacy, questioned everything she had been taught. As sleep finally claimed her, one thought echoed in her mind. If one human could show such compassion to his enemy, what else might her people have gotten wrong? The third day in the tunnels began like the others, with Vela testing her strength and Elias checking her wounds. But something had shifted between them. The wary tension had evolved into something more complex, a careful dance around the growing connection neither wanted to acknowledge. The bleeding has stopped completely, Elias said, his fingers gentle as he examined the healing lacerations on her arm. Zilani regenerative capabilities are remarkable. Vela found herself studying his hands as he worked, calloused from years of medical practice marked with small scars from emergency surgeries performed under fire, hands that healed rather than destroyed. Your touch, she said quietly. It is different. Different how? He asked, not looking up from his work. Zilani healing is efficient but painful. We believe suffering builds strength. But you, she paused, searching for words. You make the hurt go away. Elias finally met her eyes. Pain doesn't make us stronger. It just makes us hurt. There's enough suffering in the universe without adding to it deliberately. Such a simple philosophy. Yet it challenged everything Vela had been taught. Zilani culture glorified endurance through agony, believing it forged superior warriors. But as she watched Elias work, she began to wonder if perhaps strength came, in many forms. Tell me about your world, she said impulsively. Elias raised an eyebrow. My world? Earth. I have seen intelligence reports, but they show only military installations, strategic resources. What is it like for those who do not fight? A small smile crossed Elias's face, the first genuine one she'd seen. Beautiful, in ways you might not expect. We have vast oceans that change color with the sky, mountains that touch the clouds, forests where light filters through leaves like stained glass. His expression grew distant. There are places where people gather just to make music together, where children play games that have no winners or losers, where lovers watch sunsets and make promises they actually keep. Lovers, Vela repeated, the concept foreign yet intriguing. Zilani pair for genetic compatibility and social advantage. But humans choose based on emotion? Sometimes, Elias said, a hint of sadness in his voice. Sometimes we're lucky enough to find someone who makes us want to be better than we are. You speak as one who has lost such a person. Elias was quiet for a long moment. Her name was Catherine. She was a teacher on New Geneva when your forces attacked the colony. He didn't speak with anger, just a deep, abiding sorrow. She died protecting her students. Vela felt something cold settle in her stomach. New Geneva had been one of her victories, a successful raid that had eliminated a key human supply depot. She had never considered the teachers, the children, the lovers who made promises. I am sorry. Are you? Elias asked, and there was genuine curiosity in the question. Or are you saying what you think I want to hear? Vela considered this carefully. 3 days ago, I would not have been. Your mate was an acceptable casualty in a necessary military action. But now, she struggled with emotions she had no words for. Now I think of her watching the light filter through leaves, and I find I regret her absence from your world. Something shifted in Elias's expression. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing her as more than just a casualty. As the day progressed, they found themselves sharing more. Vela spoke of her childhood on Korath Prime, where she had been selected for warrior training at age 7, and had not seen her birth parents since. She described the harsh beauty of the crystal cities, the honor codes that governed every aspect of Zilani society, the price of strength in a culture that viewed emotional attachment as weakness. Do you ever wonder, Elias asked as they shared, a meal of recycled rations, what you might have been if you hadn't been chosen as a warrior? The question struck Vela like a physical blow. One does not wonder about impossible things. Humor me. Vela found herself actually considering it. There was a time as a child before the selection, I was fascinated by the growth tenders who cultivated our food crystals. The way they could coax beauty from harsh soil, make sustenance from barren rock. She paused, surprised by the memory. I thought it would be peaceful. You wanted to grow things instead of destroy them. I wanted to create, she admitted, the words feeling like a confession, but that was childhood foolishness. Warriors do not create. Says who? Elias challenged gently. You're creating something right now. What do you mean? This, he gestured between them. Understanding. Connection. The possibility that two people from different worlds might see each other as more than just enemies. If that's not creation, I don't know what is. That night, as they settled into their respective sleeping areas, Vela found herself acutely aware of Elias's presence. The steady sound of his breathing, the way he murmured in his sleep, fragments of conversations with people long gone. She had never shared such intimate space with another being, never been vulnerable in the presence of someone who could have killed her. Elias, she whispered into the darkness. Yeah? Why do you not fear me? Even wounded, I could kill you with my bare hands. I know, he said simply. But you won't. How can you be certain? Because 3 days ago you woke up in the hands of your enemy, and instead of trying to escape or attack, you asked why I saved you. Because you say thank you when I bring you water. Because you asked about Earth not as an intelligence officer, gathering data, but as someone curious about beauty. His voice was soft in the darkness. Because whatever they made you into, Vela, I can still see the child who wanted to grow things. Vela felt something crack inside her chest, not physical pain, but something deeper. For the first time in decades, she felt seen not as a weapon or a commander or a symbol of Zilani might, but as a person. The sensation was terrifying and wonderful. What happens when we leave this place, she asked. I don't know, Elias admitted. But I know that whatever happens, we'll face it as two people who chose to see each other's humanity. Even if that choice destroys us both? Especially then, he said. Some things are worth the risk. As sleep finally claimed her, Vela found herself dreaming not of battles and conquest, but of crystal gardens, where two figures worked side by side, growing, impossible beauty in the darkness between stars. On the seventh day, their fragile sanctuary was shattered by the distant echo of voices in the tunnel system. Elias froze at his medical scanner, and Vela's hand instinctively moved to where her weapon should have been. The voices were speaking. Zelani, a search patrol, methodical and getting closer. They found the entrance, Vela whispered, her warrior instincts flooding back. My people are thorough when they want something. What do they want? Elias asked, though he suspected he already knew. Me, and answers about how I survived. Vela's amber eyes met his. They will have monitored communications, analyzed the battle data. By now they know a human medic was unaccounted for. The voices grew louder, accompanied by the mechanical whir of scanning equipment. Elias began rapidly packing his medical supplies, but Vela caught his wrist. Where will you run? She asked. This mining complex has 17 levels, 43 primary tunnels and over 200 side passages. But there are only 4 ways to reach the surface, and my people will have blocked them all. Then what do you suggest? Vela was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities. There is a way, she said finally, but you will not like it. Tell me. I surrender to them. Claim I was unconscious for days, that I woke to find myself already treated by automated medical systems that survived the battle. I returned to my ship as a hero, who survived impossible odds. And me? You die, she said bluntly. They will hunt you through every tunnel until they find you, and when they do, your death will not be quick or clean. Unless what? Vela's hand moved to his face, her elongated fingers tracing the line of his jaw. The gesture was tender, possessive, and completely at odds with her next words. Unless I kill you first. Quickly. Painlessly. A mercy they would not show you. Elias stared at her, seeing the genuine anguish in her expression. You're serious. It is the only way to save you from what they would do. I have seen Zelani interrogations, Elias. I would not wish that death on my worst enemy, much less. She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Much less what? Much less the man I have come to love. The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Elias felt his heart stop, then restart with painful intensity. Vela, I know it is impossible, she said quickly. I know what I am, what I have done. I know that by any measure of justice I deserve to die for my crimes. But these 7 days with you, they have shown me what I could have been, what we could have been in a different universe. Elias reached up to cover her hand with his own. What if there was another way? There is no other way. My people will find us within the hour. What if you didn't go back? Vela's eyes widened. What are you saying? Come with me. There are neutral stations beyond the Veil Nebula, places where neither human nor Zelani authority reaches. I would be a traitor, Vela whispered. Desertion means death, but worse than death. My family name would be stripped from the honor rolls. My achievements would be erased. I would become unperson. But you would be alive. We would be alive. Together. The voices in the tunnels were closer now, maybe 10 minutes away. Vela closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Elias saw a transformation. The uncertain woman who had questioned everything was gone, replaced by the decisive commander who had terrorized human space. My people cannot find you here, she said. But if you are discovered elsewhere in the complex, you might escape in the confusion. Vela, don't. She silenced him with a kiss that was desperate, hungry, and heartbreaking all at once. When they broke apart, her amber eyes blazed with resolve. I choose you, she whispered against his lips. I choose love over duty, creation over destruction, hope over honor. But I will not let them take you alive. Before Elias could protest, Vela was moving with fluid grace born of decades of training. She activated a small charge from her utility belt, enough to collapse this section of tunnel and create a diversion. But instead of the explosion he expected, she triggered something else entirely. The mining complex's emergency evacuation system roared to life, filling the tunnels with deafening alarms and strobing lights. In the chaos, she grabbed Elias and pulled him through a maintenance hatch he hadn't even noticed. "Service elevator," she shouted over the noise. "Goes directly to level 1. Your people's emergency frequency is 127.4 MHz, broadcast continuously, and they might reach you before mine do. What about you?" Vela smiled, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked truly at peace. "I am going to make a choice that will echo through both our species. One way or another, this ends today." The elevator lurched upward, carrying Elias away from the woman who had changed everything he thought he knew about love, war, and the possibility of redemption. As the alarms faded below them, he heard something that made his blood run cold. The sound of energy weapons firing, and Vela's voice raised in what could only be a battle cry. But it wasn't a cry of attack. It was a challenge, directed at her own people, in defense of the human she loved. The rescue came 3 hours later, a human patrol ship responding to Elias's emergency beacon. As the medical team loaded him aboard, he caught a glimpse of the mining station's surface through the viewport. Smoke rose from several breach points, and the twisted wreckage of 2 Zilani fighters lay scattered across the landing pad. "What happened down there?" Commander Torres asked as the ship's medic examined Elias. "Our sensors detected massive weapons fire in the lower levels." "I'm not entirely sure," Elias said, though the weight in his chest told him he knew exactly what had happened. "I was trying to reach the surface when the complex's alarms activated. I heard fighting, but Vela had made her choice, and the consequences were written in smoke and debris." It took 6 months for the full story to emerge through intelligence channels and intercepted Zilani communications. Commander Vela Korath had indeed survived the initial raid on mining station Echo 7, but upon regaining consciousness, she had done something unprecedented in Zilani military history. She had turned her weapons on her own search team. The official Zilani report called it a breakdown brought on by head trauma. The human analysis suggested a more complex psychological break with her conditioning. But Elias knew the truth. She had chosen love over loyalty and paid the ultimate price. The firefight in the tunnels had lasted 17 minutes. Vela had killed 3 Zilani warriors and wounded 2 others before taking a plasma bolt to the chest. Her final transmission, intercepted by both human and Zilani intelligence, consisted of a single phrase repeated in both languages. "Some things are worth the risk." Elias learned of her death while recovering at Starbase Medical on Luna. The news hit him like a physical blow, leaving him hollow and aching in ways that had nothing to do with his own injuries. He had lost Catherine to the randomness of war, but Vela had died making a choice for love. The galaxy, however, was not done with their story. 6 months after the incident at Echo 7, Elias received an encrypted message on a channel, known only to deep space smugglers and information brokers. The header was simple: "From a friend beyond the veil." The message itself contained coordinates for a meeting point in the Kepler neutral zone, along with a single line: "Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." Elias stared at the message for 3 full minutes before his hands started shaking. It was impossible. He had seen the intelligence reports, the confirmation of her death from 3 separate sources, but something about the phrasing, the casual reference to their conversation about taking risks. 2 weeks later, he submitted his resignation from Human Fleet Medical and booked passage on a freight hauler bound for the neutral zone. The cantina on Station Prometheus was exactly the kind of place where nobody asked questions, and everybody minded their own business. Elias nursed a synthol and tried not to check the chronometer every 30 seconds. She was late, or she wasn't coming, or she was really dead, and this was some kind of elaborate intelligence trap. Then she walked in, and his heart stopped. Vela looked different. Her hair was shorter, dyed a deep brown instead of its natural black, and surgical scars marked her throat where the plasma burn had nearly killed her. But her amber eyes were the same, and when they met his across the crowded room, the smile that crossed her face was radiant. "You came," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. I thought you were dead, he managed. I very nearly was. The plasma bolt collapsed my lung and stopped my heart for 4 minutes. But it seems Zilani medical technology is even better than I thought. She gestured to the scars on her throat. They repaired the damage, but before they could complete the procedure, something wonderful happened. What? My people decided I was too much trouble alive. A commander who turns on her own forces is a liability, even recovered from head trauma. So they declared me dead, sealed my medical records, and arranged for my body to be lost during transport. Her smile turned predatory. What they didn't know was that Dr. Kent, the surgeon who saved my life, had served on border stations. He had seen too many casualties from both sides to believe the propaganda anymore. He helped you escape. He gave me a second chance at life, a new identity, passage to neutral space, and a message. Go find your human and build something better than war. Elias reached across the table to take her hand, marveling at how perfectly their fingers interlaced despite their physiological differences. And have you found your human? I believe I have, she said softly. The question is, what do we build now? They spent the next 3 hours talking about the war that still raged between their peoples, about the small neutral stations where humans and Zilani sometimes traded in wary peace, about the possibility of a life beyond the conflict that had defined them both. I have an idea, Vela said as they walked along the station's observation deck, watching ships from a dozen different species come and go. There are refugee camps throughout the neutral zone, people displaced by the war, injured by fighting. They never wanted to be part of. They need medical care. A clinic, Elias said, understanding immediately. Neutral ground, where it doesn't matter if you're human or Zilani or anything else. Where the only question is, do you need healing? It took them 8 months to establish the Haven Medical Station in the Kithara system, far from any military jurisdiction. Word spread quickly through the underground networks. There was a place where former enemies worked together to heal the wounds of war. The first patient was a human child who had lost her parents in a Zilani raid. The second was a young Zilani warrior whose ship had been destroyed by human forces. Elias treated them both while Vela organized supplies and coordinated with refugee transport ships. Within a year, Haven had grown from a single medical bay to a full station, staffed by volunteers from multiple species who had grown tired of perpetual conflict. And at its heart were 2 people who had found love in the darkest circumstances and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes of war. On quiet nights, when the medical bays were empty and the stars wheeled overhead, Elias and Vela would stand together on Haven's observation deck and watch the ships pass. Human vessels and Zilani cruisers still fired on each other in distant systems, but here in their small corner of space, former enemies worked side by side to heal rather than harm. Do you think it will end? Vela asked one night, her head resting against Elias's shoulder. The war? Someday, he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Maybe not in our lifetime, but someday. And when it does, places like this will be why. Because we chose to see each other as people instead of enemies? Because you chose compassion over conquest, Elias corrected gently. Because someone was brave enough to believe that love was worth the risk. Vela smiled and pulled him closer, their differences forgotten in the simple truth of their connection. Around them, Haven Station hummed with quiet activity, the sound of healing, of hope, of a future being built one patient at a time. In a galaxy torn apart by war, they had created something unprecedented, a place where former enemies could find, not just medical treatment, but the radical idea that perhaps with enough courage and compassion, even the deepest hatreds could be overcome. Their love story had become something larger than themselves, a symbol that in the vast darkness between stars, small lights of understanding could still shine, and in that light impossible things became possible.